Friends, I have one more quick story I'm going to cover on this Tuesday, and that is the Supreme Court. I will tease tomorrow's show. I have Dr. Everett Piper joining me tomorrow. We're going to take apart the Supreme Court decision recently issued with an astonishing, again, traitorous decision by Justice John Roberts, taking the side of the left in this court. And yes, Supreme Court is not supposed to be about politics, Republican versus Democrat. It's supposed to be uphold the Constitution and follow the law versus the make-it-up wing of the court. And Justice John Roberts joined the make-it-up wing of the court in the case involving California and the right of churches to hold worship services. But teasing that for tomorrow. There was an amazing two sets of decisions out of the Supreme Court recently, both in which they just refused to take a case that made no sense, given we have the conservative majority, a majority of justices appointed by presidents who actually believe in the Constitution. One involved the state of Idaho that has a prisoner in the prison system, a man who wants to become a woman. He wants transgender surgery. And the state of Idaho was unwilling to pay for it. It's a prisoner deciding he wants to transition himself. Idaho said no. Case made it up to Ninth Circuit. Ninth Circuit said Idaho, the state of Idaho, did have the obligation to pay for and provide this prisoner with surgery to transition him to become a woman. And this is the Ninth Circuit, which is getting better, but still has a lot of very left-wing judges. Case is brought up to the Supreme Court, hoping, of course, to have the court hear the case and essentially answer the question, could a state possibly have the obligation to provide transgendering surgery for an inmate? And the Supreme Court refused to take the case, meaning it left in place the Ninth Circuit decision forcing Idaho to pay for it. And only two judges we know of spoke up to say, this isn't right, or we should be taking this case. It was Alito and Thomas spoke up and said, actually, we should be taking this case. But obviously, the other three relatively constitutionally based judges would not back the two judges who wanted to take the case. Simply astonishing, kind of like and I want to say something about courts. I actually am a lawyer by background. I love the law. I love the concept of the law. I love the idea of the structure of our government and what the Constitution set up. And then we have a judiciary obligated to follow law, not obligated to protect any particular class of people, elected people or wealthy people. They just are supposed to follow the law. It takes courage sometimes to follow the law. My guess, and I don't know, but my guess is there are so many decisions pending before the Supreme Court, so many decisions that are going to be controversial, that are going to bring criticism if the court stands up for the Constitution, which in many cases means shoots down whatever the latest left-wing antic is and says, no, Idaho doesn't have to pay for transgender surgery, or yes, on some other issue. Even Supreme Court justices, they are human beings who may have been just not wanting yet one more example, one more time. They are ridiculed and mocked and harangued by the leftists, as I call them, the Democrat media mob. The Democrats control the media in this country, who control the narrative, and you just might have had some judges thinking, I'm not bothering taking that one on. There is no basis for the refusal of the Supreme Court to take this case unless they just decided, I'm not going to be bothered with this. I'm not going to give myself that next headache. And they didn't take the case. And it's not really just this one case. It is that, as you well know, precedents are set. Now, it's not as much precedential weight is given to a Supreme Court decision to refuse to take a case as there is given to a decision the Supreme Court issues. Had they taken the case and issued a decision, that has much more stare decisis, much more power, weight to be followed in the future. This is not good, and there will be other courts and other judges who point to this decision and say, well, the Supreme Court seemed to think it was okay. So, it's a validation of what the left was doing in this case. So, even in this era of, we are at war in America internally for the preservation of this country, the preservation of the ideas, the founding ideas of America. Everybody has to step up. Everybody has to take risks. Everybody has to say the hard things. Everybody has to fight. Whatever your battle is, you fight it, including the Supreme Court. I'm just very disappointed they decided it wasn't worth a fight on this absurd idea that the state, the taxpayers, should pay for some guy who wants to transition to become a woman. And Idaho is now stuck with a decision saying they're going to have to pay for it. I think the Supreme Court in this case didn't want to deal with the backlash and made the easy decision to just turn their heads and say, okay, let's let that one go. Not good enough. Not good enough in a time when we're at war for the very identity of America.